right? And please to hand over the headset on the 3rd, the last days. So this Worldcanic is the result of a great collaboration between the gastronomy centers and the Island Council of Lanzarote. So we're going to start mentioning how everything happened. So therefore, we are going to give a warm welcome to Benjamin Lana, Managing Director of Centro Gastronomía, who takes the floor. Thank you, Benjamin. It is a miracle that Javier Agullo you can understand him with a face mask on. We're going to do our best to try to understand me. Okay, good morning all together. The interpreter is also going to remove the face mask. To be here today is a present for all of us, not only for me, and to see what, about a year and a half, we just had kind of an idea, and that idea started to shape, and today is a reality. This gathering is kind of a simple gathering, but on the other hand, it is quite an ambitious event. We are here to try to link the words with fire, the community, and the know-how, and all revolving around the volcanoes. Some of us at least, come from volcanic and unique territories. My territory is unique as well. There are some, we do not have volcanoes, but we have other interesting things. And I think that volcanic territories and volcanic communities show us, people that can have resilience, that adapt to the territory. And resilience is something that is going to be very important, bearing in mind all the things that are happening and going on in the planet. So we shall respect, the earth, the human beings. I don't want to add too many things, because I think that during the previous presentation with the president of the Island Council and the presentation that we carried out in Madrid, we mentioned many things, but there's one idea that I would like to underpin, namely gastronomy is one of the most revolutionary tools that we currently have in the society, the only one that is able to link, as Javier said before, tourism, to link the primary sector, the agro-industry, science, culture, and depending on how we focus it, we would have one result or the other. Anyhow, I once say what we know, many people say that we are what we eat, but we're not far from that idea, right? I mean, it's something that is linked to our daily lives, of all of us, irrespectively of our background, training, work, jobs. And it's marvelous because food is also surprising. Also, when they come from other cultures, we never reject it. And most of the cultural activities are linked to gastronomy. So I think that we shall celebrate it and take advantage of these circumstances that we have to grow together. And apart from discovering the different usages of thermic and the uniqueness of the volcanic produce that come from that great soil, that we somehow can pay attention to Lanzarote as a meeting point from people from all over the world, that have something that was not done before. And I think this is a great chance, maybe not this first year where we will see some volcanic territories from 3 different continents, but maybe in the future events we might have the possibility to talk about many other things. So thank you so much to all the attendees, to the Island Council of Lanzarote for trusting so much in our project from the very beginning. I know that when we share the original idea about this Worldcanic, they insisted us on, celebrating it in Lanzarote, yes, sir, yes. And now we are here all together, so happy. And thank you all the sponsors from the island and from abroad. Do we have simultaneous interpreting? Yes, we do. So he will not have to repeat everything in English. So thank you again, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I would like to, Alberto Aguiar shall take the floor now before the President of the Island Council, and I wish you a nice day. The best part is, to drive all the way here to Los Jameos, so we kind of got the taste of the volcano with all the landscapes and forget about the hectic, with the flights, and that is linked to the business world. So Alberto Aguiar takes the floor. Hello, good morning all together. First of all, I would like to apologize the President of the Island Council, Maria Dolores Carujo. She wanted to be here and she asked me to give you warm regards on her behalf. It would be difficult to find a better setting than Jameos del Agua to inaugurate Volcanic, the first international gastronomy and ecosystem and volcanic ecosystem event. The eruption created a tunnel of over 6 kilometers length where the Cabo de los Verdes and Jameos are. And this space is kind of a big hole on the soil that originated when volcanic tube collapsed. But the uniqueness of this place is the result of several eruptions that have been adapted by human creativity. In fact, Jameos del Aguas is the first big work of César Manrique, and it means a first sketch of his concept of linking art and nature. About 50 years ago, César Manrique turned this natural space into his work art, and today is one of the main attractives in Lanzarote. And therefore, I believe that the place where we are here today is a great example of the spirit that inspired this international gastronomy and volcanic ecosystems event organized by Vocento Gastronomia and the Lanzarote Island Council. We are very proud to celebrate and hold this first meeting of volcanic gastronomy of the world, because it reminds us that life can grow back after a big disaster. In our case, it was in the 18th century where we suffered an eruption that lasted for about 6 years, devastating towns, estates and crops. But after that, we were capable to reconstruct the island and bring progress. Therefore, the volcanic systems do not only host lava and fire, but a big potential to recover life and development. Along these days, the 3 days, we're going to show the uniqueness of the gastronomies that are developed in the volcanic ecosystems, and therefore cooks, winemakers and all people revolving around the sector will show how science, territory, produce, tourism can link to and show something together. For the Island Council, we feel really proud to show some of the places like the Restaurante Volcanic, Mirador del Río, apart from Jameos del Agua. I'm convinced that all the attendees will not only see in these spaces what happened with the destruction, but the creative power of human being when art and nature link to create beauty on the volcanic ashes. But also the private initiative contributes pretty much in many of the spaces where we're going to gather together and experience something interesting, which shows how robust the business fabric is. Together, volcanoes and gastronomy are going to show a unique product that will catch the attention to the most curious travelers, and Lanzarote is a good example of it. I would like to congratulate all of you and welcome you warmly. I'm thinking of La Palma and Douglas. This event will be very useful and a good example for that. So I officially declare Worldcanic open. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Island Minister Alberto Aguiar. I think that with these 2 speeches, we have understood that here we have much more than just an event. We're talking about a meta event And as Benjamin Lara said before, this is going to be a simple event, but I would rather say, and as a son of a very famous sculptor, you know, simplicity is a complexity that's been really solved. And having said that, and before we start, I would like to call all the panelists and all people that have participated to celebrate this Worldcanic to come here on stage in order to make a family picture. So if you don't mind, just come here on stage.
cocineros, científicos.
Cooks, researchers, and all the people that participate in the Worldcanic, please come here on stage to make a family picture, because I think this will be an historic picture, because as we said, this is the beginning of something that will become very big. So please take the stage.
Por aquí. Buscando los huecos, y afortunadamente sois muchos. Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you. Thank you all panelists and people that participate during this first Volcanic event. This amazing event that will keep us busy in the upcoming days and probably much more. Well, having said that and having made the official presentation, let's start with the panelists. And we're going to start, I mean, we wanted to see which are the ambitions and all the different directives that will encourage the volcanic concept during this 2021 edition and in the following editions as well. So today, let's try to focus on the volcanic territories, and let's focus on those territories. And therefore, we have one of the most prominent volcanologists in volcanology. He is director of geoscience in Barcelona at the CSIC in Barcelona, the Spanish National Research Council. So, Joan Martí, the floor is yours.
Buen día, buen día.
Good morning. Good morning, Joan. The microphone is now yours. Please go ahead. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you to the organisers for inviting me to take part in this event. I think it's going to be a huge success. And I'd like to congratulate the organisers for choosing this space, one of the jewels of volcanology, to host the event. It's really a privilege to be able to kick off the event in this space, Jameos del Agua. It was a space created by nature, but of course was then adapted by Cesar Manrique, a local artist who was very involved with the beginning as well of the studies involving volcanoes. The idea of my talk today is to give you a volcanic vision of the world. So I'd like to explain basically what volcanoes are, and to talk about some of the most prominent volcanic eruptions that have really set the way for volcanology as a field of study. Now, of course, with what's happening in La Palma right now, there have been lots of volcanologists on TV and in media, but actually there still isn't a university degree anywhere in the world in volcanology. There are master's programs on offer in France, but that's it. So it's really a multidisciplinary field. People come to volcanology from other fields of study to try and understand these volcanoes, but this title, volcanologist, is often quite difficult to digest because it really doesn't exist as a profession. There are physicists and biologists, etc., but not so much volcanologists. So, well, what I'd like to do today is give a basic overview of what volcanoes are, how they work, and why they're so important. And this is perhaps the key part of my presentation today. So the first question we have to take into account is, what is a volcano? Of course, everyone has some kind of idea. They have an image in their mind because they've seen pictures in books or on TV, but really we need to define a volcano as a point on the Earth's surface where molten earth appears in the form of magma. If this isn't there, then it's not a volcano. We can have mountains of all kinds of sizes, but if it has this magma, then it's a volcano. And another important thing then is that if this molten rock comes from the interior of the Earth, then this means that this volcano is going to give us information about what's underneath us. So this is what's really interesting about volcanoes, apart from many other things that we'll look at today. But this is the main key aspect. Volcanoes exist because our planet is dynamic, it's alive, it's in constant movement in its interior. Tectonic plates lie underneath us that give our Earth its form, but they're in constant movement. Sometimes they move just a few centimeters a year or just a few millimeters, but they're always in movement. They crash into each other, some separate from each other. And what's happening in La Palma, I'm sure, has something to do with something that's happening, for instance, in Indonesia, on the other side of the world, because everything is related. So it's key that we understand this relationship and this dynamic of our planet. I always find it funny when people say that we spend so much time and money studying space, and we often forget to study our own planet, where we live. So it seems a little bit, it doesn't really seem to make much sense, no? We really should be studying more where we live before we study places outside of our planet. Volcanoes are usually located in specific locations at the joining points of different tectonic plates. There is a reason behind everything that happens. And so scientists in this field want to understand this processes very clearly, but once we've done that, the harder thing is really to explain it. But the key thing to remember then is that our planet is in constant motion in its core, and this motion, this movement, is what causes earthquakes and volcanoes. Why are volcanoes important? Well, there are many reasons. First and foremost, we're here thanks to volcanoes. If it weren't for volcanoes, there wouldn't be an atmosphere, and without an atmosphere, there wouldn't be life. They have given us life. But they have also given us many important natural resources, raw materials for construction, for energy, geothermal energy above all. They've offered us very fertile areas of land. Many settlements have actually been established in the surroundings of volcanoes. Despite the danger, people choose to live there because of the rich soil. They're also important because, well, quite obviously, there is an economic link. In the Canaries, tourism is a key economic factor, and many people come here to appreciate the volcanic landscape. This type of volcano tourism has grown a great deal in recent years, and so it's something that must be taken care of. It's good also to be able to offer our tourists information, background about what they're seeing. One of the downsides, of course, to volcanoes is the risk involved. As with most natural processes, volcanoes do bring with them negative consequences on our lives. And this is because ultimately they're doing what they're supposed to do. And they're only causing us harm because we've invaded their natural space. And sometimes we don't do this in the correct way, and this means that the impact is greater than it possibly should be. It can result in a loss of life, a loss of economy. So wherever there is a volcano, there is danger. And the level of this danger depends on our interaction with this volcano, and this is a key thing to consider. It's often very misunderstood, actually. How do volcanoes work, then? Well, it's quite simple, really. They are liquids submitted to pressure. These liquids contain dissolved gas, and it creates an excess of pressure underneath the rock. And once that pressure reaches a certain limit, it breaks through the rock and it releases to the surface. It's really exactly the same as this image you have here of a bottle of champagne. This is a liquid that's stored under pressure, and when you take the lid off, it comes gushing out. And we're going to see this basic phenomenon throughout our presentations. How big are volcanoes? Well, in fact, the one in La Palma, although it may appear to be very big, it's a very small eruption. There have been huge eruptions. There are huge volcanoes. Teide, for example, you all know, from its highest point until the base of its volcanic cone, there are 8 kilometers, because it's not just what we see above ground. The volcano actually goes much, much deeper. Its underwater lowest point is 8 kilometers below. In Garrocha in Catalonia, there is another volcano you can see in this image above. And this really characterizes the size of the volcanic eruption. Once again, there can be huge eruptions and very small eruptions. Here we have some examples. At the bottom, you can see the Toba caldera. We're going to look at this later. The crater measures 100 by almost 40 kilometers. So this means that it must have been an absolutely huge eruption. Now, when we study the size of volcanoes, we look at the cubic kilometers of magma that it emits. This helps us to calculate the amount of energy that's been expelled, that is measured with the magma that it emits, as I said. By calculating how much magma is released, we can calculate how strong it was and what the heat energy is. This is a scale that goes from 1 to 8, much like the Richter scale. And we can see here some eruptions. La Palma, for instance, as I said, it's causing huge destruction, but it's very small. But here we have some examples of huge eruptions, Pinatubo, for instance. So let's get a better idea about the scale of these volumes of magma. This is 1 cubic kilometer of magma. So it's 1,000 by 1,000 by 1,000 meters. So that's 1 to the power of 9 cubic meters. But of course, that's a figure that's very hard for us to understand in real terms. So this may be a more recognizable image. It's the football stadium in Barcelona, Camp Nou. And it would be as though you filled this 420 times to the top. That would be 1 cubic kilometer. So that's a huge amount. But it's also the same as giving every single person on the planet, 7.5 billion people, a half a ton. That's 1 cubic kilometer. So that gives us a better idea of what we're dealing with here. This is another unfortunate way that we measure volcanoes, by the amount of deaths that it's caused. So we have examples here of volcanic eruptions that have caused 20,000 deaths. But what this is really a measure of is the problem of this interaction with the volcanoes, the way that we, people, relate to our surroundings. So if we see that an eruption has caused a lot of loss of life, then it tells us that something went wrong at some point in time. How do we study volcanoes? Well, via the rocks. As you know, in La Palma, there's lots of lava and ash, and we go and collect that and study it to figure out what the eruption has been like. By collecting these materials in situ, it helps us to study all of the details, not only of this eruption, but also previous eruptions. So we use geology. And how do we monitor volcanoes? This is a common question, whether or not volcanoes warn us before they erupt. Well, in most cases, yes, but we have to know how to listen to the volcanoes, and we have to be there. We can't monitor a volcano if our teams aren't there on site. So we have a whole series of tools that help us to do this. When there is an active volcano, we install these these tools to monitor different things, because usually, as I say, volcanoes do give some warning, perhaps a couple of months. In La Palma we had 10 days warning. Sometimes it's only 3 days, sometimes it's years, but they usually do give a warning. We just have to know how to understand that warning. And what impact do volcanic eruptions have? Well, the impact can be very diverse. There can be direct impacts, so ash falling on our roofs that need cleaning. We can't throw this ash in the drains because it would block up the drain, so we have to dispose of it another way. It can have an impact on aeroplanes. These days there are more flights than ever, and this can be very dangerous because it can get inside the engines. I'm not sure how to go back a slide, sorry. But let's just say it's dangerous. For instance, the eruption in Iceland 10 years ago completely paralyzed air traffic for over 3 months, with billions lost. It wasn't a particularly big eruption, but it happened in a particular moment with particular atmospheric conditions, which led to this huge disaster. And this is the problem. We need to understand how volcanoes work. We need to be on the ball with what they're doing, and we need to prepare ourselves. We need to take the necessary measures in each case so that these impacts are minimized as far as possible. This is our job as scientists, and it's also the job of those people that receive our information, that need to use it to take these appropriate measures. So I'm going to talk about some of the most significant volcanic eruptions in my opinion. The first is Toba. I showed a picture earlier. This was the biggest eruption that has ever been known in recent geology, in the past 75,000 years. It took place in Indonesia, and it created this huge caldera, as I said, measuring 100 by 35 kilometers, and 3,000 cubic kilometers of magma were ejected into the air. So it was 3,000 of those, that comparison that we made earlier with the football stadium. The hominoids that existed at that time, many of them went extinct. So there was the humans, the people that existed at that time. So human evolution was affected because of this volcanic eruption. There was a lack of food, so certain species died out. So this volcano had a global effect and potentially could have caused a mass extinction.
Porque nos hemos saltado la vuestra. A ver, ¿se puede ir para atrás en la diapositiva?
Can we go back one slide? Here we go. Oh, no, one more. This one, yes, this is your volcano, Timanfaya, 1730 to 1736. This was the second biggest eruption in volume to have occurred in Europe in history. So this was 2 to 3 kilometers cubed of magma, so nothing in comparison to this previous example, but it had a huge impact. At European level, there was an effect from the sulfur that was emitted. Trees, for instance, actually demonstrate a reduction in their growth in the time surrounding this eruption. Just before this eruption, there was a famine in Lanzarote, and people began to emigrate. And when this eruption occurred, many more decided to emigrate. And many of these people arrived in the US, and they founded the Alamo Mission in Texas, the very famous site of this battle between the Texans and the Americans. This was founded by people from Lanzarote. Many people don't know this, but it's true. They left during and slightly before this eruption in 1730. Another significant eruption took place in Laki in Iceland. This was the biggest eruption actually in Europe. It emitted a huge amount of magma into the atmosphere with a high volume of sulfur. This led to a nuclear winter that lasted 2 years. It led to a famine in Europe that, according to Benjamin Franklin, who was the representative of the US in France at the time, well, he said that it was the trigger for the French Revolution. So another example of an eruption here that had a regional impact of significant strength. This is another eruption in the year 1979. So this eruption took place in the year 79. And we are all very familiar with it because we have found in Pompeii mummies, people that were trapped by this ash. In fact, what we know is that these people were worried that the eruption was going to happen. Many people left their home, but the authorities forced them to go back to their town, and that was when the eruption actually happened. Montpellier in Martinique in 1902. This was what happened to the city after this pyroclastic flows. Only 2 people survived. One of those people was in prison. The others died because there were a local celebration, a religious celebration that day, and so people had come together, and absolutely everybody perished because the whole city was completely flattened. Another significant eruption in terms of human interaction was this one in Iceland, because people tried to stop the eruption. They sprayed water in front of the falling lava, and actually for some reason it worked, and they managed to save the port. This was a very important fishing port, and so they were desperate for the lava not to arrive at the port. Can we just go one back, please?
Anterior. Esto cuando toca se va. Vale, Mount St. Helens. Esto es en
Mount St. Helens in 1980 then in the US. This was 1 cubic kilometre of magma, but it caused huge devastation, and it was most important because it really set the beginning of modern volcanology. It was the turning point from classical volcanology to the modern version. Ever since this eruption, we've tried to quantify volcanic activity, to attach numbers and models to this science. Before, it was a descriptive science. We described the rocks, their morphology, etc. But after this eruption, everything changed. This was the beginning of the way we work with volcanoes today. As I said, this change from descriptive volcanology to quantitative volcanology. Chichon in 1982 in Mexico followed, let's say, the path of Vesuvius. Those people that lived around the volcano noticed changes in the atmosphere, an increase in noise. They fled, they evacuated. The authorities in Mexico forced them to go back, and the next day there was a volcano and everybody perished. So once again the same thing happened, something that really should never happen. This is another well-known eruption because very sadly two of the main volcanologists of the time lost their lives. They were very unlucky, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. It wasn't a very big eruption. Maurice and Kate Fwaff. But what did the Japanese do? Well, rather than trying to recover this area, what they decided to do was to leave the affected area as a museum so that others in the future will be able to understand what volcanoes do. And perhaps this is what we should do in La Palma. I don't know, it's a suggestion. But this was what they decided to do here. Nevado de Ruiz is another example of bad management. There was prior warning of what would happen, but nobody paid attention because the second harvest of cotton was about to be collected. The countryside needed to be prepared, so there was no order for evacuation, and 28,000 people died. Another example, as I say, of poor management. Lagos in Cameroon in 86 then. I was present actually during this eruption. We still really don't know what happened because they died because they were suffocated by CO2. 1,700 people and 4,000 livestock animals in one night. And really, although we think we know what happened, we don't know the details. Pinatubo in Philippines, bigger than Mount St. Helens, 8 cubic kilometers of magma. This caused a worldwide change, a half a degree drop in temperature in the year following the eruption in the North Hemisphere because of the components of this eruption. In 2000, the lava flows destroyed this city in Congo, but most people had evacuated in time. So in Congo, there was greater knowledge, greater awareness about volcanoes than in many other places in the world. So this is something that's a byproduct of volcanoes. We're going here tomorrow, actually, is Lote Hilario in Timanfaya. There are lots of other movements, for instance in Garrote in Catalonia, to do with volcanic cuisine. Tourist offerings directly related with the world of volcanoes. This is something that we're harnessing now. Everything can be culture, everything can be knowledge, and it can help us to fill our stomachs too. Thank you.
Moltes gràcies.
Thank you, Joan Martí, volcanologist. As I said, he has placed us in the right place. He has given an overall vision of what volcanoes are. And I think that he has even put us inside a volcano. Thank you so much, Joan Martí. And now that we know much more about than we did before about volcanoes, let's get started with the volcanic cuisine that Joan Martí mentioned at the end of his speech as one of the questions that might be linked and might favor the volcanic territories apart from the other things that have been mentioned before. And let's start with a cook that, according to my opinion, might be is a key person to understand the contemporary Italian cuisine. She is a chef that has been working for quite a few years, although she's young. And she was able, together with other colleagues from her country, to generate or to build a new generation of contemporary Italian cuisine. And in addition, she comes directly from Sicily, and her restaurant is just about 40 minutes away from the volcano. I think that we're going to enjoy it. Viviana Varese takes the floor.
Gracias a ti. Buenos días.
Hello, good morning. I'm going to show you a short video about the new project that I'm running in Sicilia, and then I will get the support of a PowerPoint. I don't speak fluent Spanish, but I hope that you understand me right.
Es esto. Allora,
Well, that was it. I will explain who I am. I was born near another volcano next to Vesuvio because I work in the countryside. I come from Amalfi, which is about 30 minutes away from Vesuvio. And when I was a little girl, I went to the Lombardy, to the north of Italy. And there I started to work with my parents when I was about 7 years old. My first job was, just to prepare pizza. And later on, I had to study and learn all the kitchen tasks, and then hot cuisine. And I remember that my first experience in hot cuisine was when I was 11, 12 years, and the place that I had in Milan, where I was awarded with one Michelin star in a very renowned restaurant called Viva, where we pay much attention on sustainability in a bigger city like Milan and areas with social exclusion. And this is what everything revolves around a bigger city. And during the pandemic, we had to close the restaurant 4 times, and the side effects of the pandemic were very hard, because to live in a bigger city means that everything is closed, everybody locked down in small apartments. I really felt that I had to go back to nature. And that's the reason why I, after organizing a very simple but complicated lunch, because having a Michelin star, it puts a little bit of pressure on you. So I had the possibility to travel to Sicily, and that's what I mentioned. This is Villa Dorata Country Restaurant. That's the name of the resort. It's kind of a boutique hotel with 13 rooms and 25 hectares estate, where we have planted almond trees, lemon trees, orange trees, olive trees, and vineyards. Is near the Etna volcano, which is the highest volcano and most active volcano in the continental Europe, if I'm right. And about 3/4 of the crops in Sicilia, that is a big island, is produced near the Etna. That means the soil is very fertile with many interesting characteristics, and we produce lots of fruits and products with high biodiversity. We try to look for all the raw or basic ingredients near the country house, and we prepare a gastronomy which is 100% with produce from Sicily. And we put a lot of attention on the ingredients, their origin, which is produced by small farmers, right? This is an old apple from the Etna region. Many vineyards, and most of the vineyards that is produced in Sicilia is in vineyards near Etna. And we also have very old grains, about 20 different grain types that we are using to produce bread, pizza, dough, and all the breakfast products. This is the mill where we collect the flour. Is from 1700, and the stone is from 1700, and for about 50 years we can use those stones. And we also have the black pig from the Nibrodi region, again near the Etna volcano, that lives in wild regions, and not near the volcano, but rather, and then here we have the manna de Madonia, which is a sugar that comes from a tree, and it has kind of a, it has many lactic fermentation products, and we produce the sorbets with lemon and with some herbs from the countryside. And that's the way we keep on looking for new products, like the beans, frijol bada. We have about 10 different types of beans, the frijol. We work with these beans because we're talking about a very small grain, is a small bean which is cultivated by a young lady, and we have the intention to keep on supporting these young women who are working, as farmers. We have the intention to foster their productions and support women as well. And we're living from natural products. I mean, we're talking about a very strong nature with a very fertile soil. And in the month of July and August, which is really, really warm. In fact, this year we reached 43, 45, or even 48 degrees Celsius. And then we have the black bee, which is one of us, is an bee to be found near the Etna that produces a great honey. We need to protect it because it's endangered. And we try to develop a sustainable product and with a cuisine with a very low environmental impact.
Dorata, haciendo
Near Villa Dorata, about 100 meters away from Villa Dorata, we have a garden, a vegetable garden of where we have employed people, disadvantaged people, immigrants, and then people that need to reconnect with life, and that way we help them to integrate. And we have over 100 different seeds in a biodynamic vegetable garden. These are the vines that we have in Villa Dorata. These are the olive trees that are nearby. And here you can see, part of the rooms, this is an eco resort. This is the surrounding nature in Villa Dorata. We have many natural herbs and plants growing in the surroundings. Likewise, we have two different types of almonds which are endemic. Or the one is the almond from the Noto region, because we are 3 kilometers away from Noto, which is Noto is a city with a Baroque architecture which is well kept. This is a UNESCO heritage site. And we have, as I said before, we have a small garden next to the kitchen. So we normally grow, the salad, lettuce and herbs. This is the place where we have our garden. And we also organize some events. And then regarding the kitchen, it's a very simple way of cooking. We try to, we prepare our dishes with local produce, and now we want to construct a new kitchen because at the moment we have 3 days a week we organize events, which is the fire cooking, where we have 13 different dishes which are prepared only with the fire oven, and 4 days a week we prepare normal dishes. That means in a normal kitchen that will be refurbished on the short term. And we are going to use this oven that you can cook with. We have a stove with low temperature, and we're going to use it because we have some power supply problems. We cannot use too much power supply. So at the moment we have 50 kilowatt hour with solar panels, but we thought that the most sustainable solution would be just to use the roof of all the rooms that we have in Villa Dorata, in order to have the solar panels above them using low energy consumption. I think these are some of the samples that I can show you of the dishes that we prepare with the fire oven, with the stove, using all the local food that we can use, because Sicilia is a very difficult soil, the one in Sicily. And to work for about in order to travel 50 kilometers, you don't have many roads. The connections on the island are quite difficult, but that difficulty means that we protect also biodiversity, and we prepare some simple dishes with ricotta, with a local tomato, and seasoned fish. And here you can see a picture of what we do, and let me show you 4 dishes which are quite simple the way we prepare. We work also using many leaves like lemon, orange leaves, also nopal, right? Because the ones that are used in Mexico, right? The nopales, and this is the prickly pear parts. And what we do, we prepare potatoes. And we prepare the dishes as if we would just have a grill, right? I mean, we don't have a grill here, but we're going to make kind of a fiction so that you have an overall idea how we prepare that.
La mia necessità stava di hacer una nuova forma.
I wanted to create a new cuisine, a very simple cuisine, very intuitive, very quick, without paying too much attention on the aesthetic part, but rather to get focused on the produce, on the products, and in order to, kind of, to be simpler and prepare something simpler to the people that come to visit us at Villa Jurata. And this is a food that seems a little bit kind of antique food and mixed with some modern nuances, like the service. So we just prepare the potato that is cooked, which is cooked in the fire oven, and then we put it in a very hot plate. We place it on the hot plate with the skin, and then we add a little bit of lemon, a little bit of fresh lemon peel, and then lemon which is fermented in salts, right? And then we use a lemon leaf, the smallest one that we find. We put it in the oven at a very low temperature to dehydrate it, and then we turn it into powder, right? This is a lemon leaf powder that is kind of a very perfumed and spicy ingredient, very intense ingredient. We use this to decorate the plates. And then we add 2 lemon leaves with some calamar. We can use this squid rings with oil, and covered it with another lemon leaf. Now we don't have the grill here, so we just go to prepare it on the pan, on a hot pan. And then on the grill we normally use an oil, and we prepare kind of a confit with lemon leaf, lemon. We cook it in a very low temperature and add it and top the potato with that oil, with that flavored oil. We normally do this in a tasting menu that is prepared in about 2 minutes, is ready to go.
Y tenemos
So in this stove area, we also can have a small oven where you can prepare pizza, and where we can also have a very big grill area, barbecue area, and 2 Japanese barbecue, which is called kamato, right? So she's grilling the lemon leaf and the squid on top of it.
es esto. Es el primero platos.
And that's the first course.
Vamos un segundo. Questo è pronto? Después hacemos un segundo plato con nopales.
And the second course will be prepared with nopales, that's namely the prickly pear pat. And it's quite easy, you know, we find the prickly pear pads, we remove the skin to take the inside. We're going to slice this.
Después que lo cortamos, ponemos mucho.
After cutting it, we pour it with a lot of salt to marinate it for about 10 minutes because the prickly pear pads contain a very, you know, a liquid that we want to get rid of. And after we have removed that liquid, we prepare a salad with the different and assorted tomatoes that we find in our garden. We have 20 different types of tomatoes. We add a little bit of fresh onion. We prepare an olive oil with basilicum, with basil. We add a little bit of lemon juice and a little bit of orange juice.
Esto lo hacemos normalmente.
And that's what we normally do. We add a little bit of orange peel, right? We never prepare orange juice or lemon juice. We just add it directly, you know, squeezing the fruit like in the old times. And we try to find, you know, the pear pads, the adequate one, because well, Sicily is a little bit desertic, you know. It has vegetation, but the soil is resembles similar to the one in Mexico with many prickly pear pads. And now we have a big avocado crops, well, cultivations, yeah. Near the Etna, we find mango, papaya, and a farmer that I know was growing even bananas, and I used to cook also with those local bananas, which is something which is quite seldom to find here. So we serve this cactus and tomato salad on this stone plate. Dress it. And right, those are the fresh vegetables that will garnish the main plates. In Sicilia, with the shrimp that we have is similar to the ones that you find here in Lanzarote. And what we do is that we just take a pan and we mix salt with the eye whites and charcoal. We smash the charcoal and mix everything together, and then we add the orange leaves and the shrimp, as if it were the Etna volcano. Now I remove this crust. This is a very antique cooking method that was quite usual in the to find, you know, to find the white, you know, to the mixture between the charcoal, the salt, and the eye whites to make this crust, to get that smoky flavor. And we go to the diners to serve this because people like to see it. Now we need the leaves to protect the shrimp or the seafood.
De hoja de naranja. Lo ponemos en el...
We serve it. Add a little bit of oil, basil olive oil, again a little bit of orange peel, with, you know, beautiful ingredients. We're talking about large red prawn. This is not what we call shrimp in Spain. Very simple, but beautiful ingredients.
La tercera hoja que vamos a buscar es la hoja.
So the third leaf that we are going to use is the fig leaf. And by the middle of August until the middle of September, you can collect it depending on the season. So to prepare this dish, which is grilled belly paprika, as I said, we will just prepare the barbecue, and then we will confit it in the pizza oven. So it's all the time, you know, it's kept warm. And then we serve it with herbs like lemon leaf, lemon peel. And we will use cheese, a regional cheese, which is from Ragusa. It's a goat cheese that has been fermented using the fig leaves. This is a great cheese. It has a lot of aromas. It's called ficu. We're talking about a fig leaf. It has been fermented for about 2-3 months.
Lo vamos a poner un poquito así.
So we're going to serve a little bit of this cheese paste. And we are going to use also mackerel. Right, we're going to put it on a fig leaf, which has been previously broiled. Add a little bit of oil, is a fig oil, right? Which is a fig oil is prepared with olive oil and the fig leaf. We add olive oil from Villarata, produced with the olives that we produce there. We grill the leaf until it becomes a little bit of crusty. Have the mackerel inside, and the fig tree is quite interesting, you know, because it has a very deep perfume or aroma. We will serve the mackerel adding a little bit of this olive oil I mentioned before, namely the one with the fig leaf oil. Right? Well, this is a real homage to the fig trees and the tree and the leaves and all those aromas that penetrate, you know, and get mixed with the fish, with the cheese. And the last course that I will prepare is one that I normally prepare at the restaurant in Milan. Is a cow bone with a meat tartare. So this is a mixture between what I prepare in Milan and Sicily, and we have changed it in Sicily because we prepare in the barbecue with herbs, Sicilian herbs, and meat directly produced on the island. You're talking about veal? Yeah. We're going to use a veal that grows in the air of Syracuse, and I think that is one of the most important veal products that we can find in Sicily, and it enables me to keep the preparation simple, because otherwise, they've done a great work, and now it is covering many small farms that produce these excellent products. So we add a little bit of salt to the grounded meats, add a little bit of oil, mix it. And in Milan, what we do, we just add the grounded meat into the bone, but in Sicily, we just add the meat, the raw meats, the grounded meats, like a tartare, with a little bit of roasted meat, which is the belly, which is that part is grilled on the barbecue, and we mix this both meat sorts. We have the grilled and the raw meat, and we just use that midriff. We add some herbs and a little bit of salad leaves or lettuce. Some onion rings, previously cooked, and when we go to serve it to the table, we just add some bone marrow, on top of it. Well, there must be a mixture between textures, temperature, sensations, different fat types. Yeah, that's it. Right? You kind of get an overall idea of the territory. And here we add some hot sauce. And we normally finish our dish. 70% of the dishes are prepared with vegetables, and 30% where we have part of it is as fish courses and part of it as meat courses, right? And that's what we offer. Well, thank you so much, Viviana, for giving us some hints and nuances about what you prepare at your place. And you're working about 40 minutes away from one of the most important volcanoes, and then we were able to see it live today. Thank you so much.
Bueno, vamos.
Great. Well, let's continue with our program. As you can see, it's full of all of these different drivers of this volcanic event in Lanzarote. We've had a volcanologist, we've had a cook, and we're also going to try and understand over these days the ecosystem. Our next guest is from the American continent. He's the president of Volcanoes Without Borders, Volcanes Sin Fronteras. He's going to talk to us about how it's possible to live in harmony with 200 volcanoes and how his country, Costa Rica, where these 200 volcanoes are present, well, how they manage this volcanic risk that Joan talked us about, how this risk should be managed, and also how to harness all of this huge, often terrible power that volcanoes possess. So we have the president of Volcanoes Without Borders, Gino Gonzalez. Please, go ahead. Where would you like to stand? I'll have the mic in the mobile mic, if that's okay, if I can just change the slides. Okay, let's get started with the video, please, with the PowerPoint. Nope, not this one. It's the other video, actually. Don't worry, we'll be right back. Here we go, here we go. 55 years of tragedy. The avalanche that we were expecting came. It was huge. It was an absolutely massive avalanche. They were huge rocks. And that was what happened that night. It took everything with it. This is our first documentary on volcanoes, tragedies related to volcanoes. We didn't know that this sandy hill was actually a volcano. It's called Sandy. It's really an animal in the form of a volcano. The biggest eruption. I thought it was going to burst my eardrums, it was so loud. The hill simply exploded. It was like a scene from Dante. I'd never seen a dead body like that. I thought it was the end of the world. You took my father away. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you for inviting me. Well, these two videos that you've just had a glimpse of, they're trailers actually for documentaries that are on YouTube. They're free to see. And the idea is to try to not forget the memory of those volcanic eruptions. Of course, things like the stories that we're seeing in La Palma today, we don't want to forget them because our memories actually are very short. This, I think, is one of the most beautiful volcanoes I've ever seen. It's called the Poas volcano. If you've been to Costa Rica, I'm sure you've seen it. We have a green lake. It's a cold lake called the Bodas Lake. Oh gosh. And there's another lake which is a hot lake, and that's the one over here, which has a white colour. This is actually the active crater of the Poas or volcano complex. You can see it at the top of the image. It's a whole series of volcanoes that make up this whole complex. This was where I began my career in volcanology, the 8th of December. I remember it like it was yesterday. My knees were shaking from the adrenaline, from the nerves, and I knew that this was going to be a meeting with the love of my life. Volcanoes Without Borders, then, is an association. As you'll see from our logo, the idea is to combine different thoughts and knowledge to do with volcanoes, because when we usually think about volcanoes, we think of red and black. But for us, they are more than that. They're a combination of different professionals, people that study all kinds of things, not just volcanology. So I invite you to follow us on social media. We are an NGO. We're an association that began in 2017. Our members are a mixture of our founders, associates, and honorary members. We've gradually grown over the years, and here you can see some of our highlights. This is who we are. We're a mixture of all different faces, people who are trying to learn about volcanoes and teach others about them. Our organisation is divided into 6 main parts. Geological research, of course, is key. Ecosystems, which is something we're going to be looking at throughout this conference, these unique volcanic ecosystems. Production, because many of our products in Costa Rica come from volcanoes. Health, because when there's an eruption, of course, the ash affects our health, and we also have problems with water with high fluoride content in volcanic areas. Communication is absolutely key, because we wouldn't exist without it. And the main part, actually, of our NGO is working with communities, because those people that live close to volcanoes are the most vulnerable. They're the ones that live day to day alongside. I would actually quite like to live next to a volcano one day, but I'd like to be able to escape as well when necessary. So there are 2 guiding paths for our organisation. Our mission is to create and to transmit knowledge about volcanoes, to reduce vulnerability of the population, and also to try to promote harnessing the resources. And our vision is to be an organisation that promotes an improved quality of life via the dissemination of information and knowledge about volcanoes. Volcanoes are life, even though that may seem an unusual statement. Life, as we know it, is made up of 2 basic components, water and organic components. At one point in time, our planet was a ball of melted material. The gases inside that were creating the material necessary for life. Actually, maybe you've seen these NASA images from these rovers that they send to Mars, and they find places that used to contain water, old lakes, and they always search for this because they know that they will find traces of life, and this is true of volcanoes. In the middle of this image, you can see a petroglyph. It's quite old, it's not in a great condition, but it's located in the Rincón de la Vieja volcano. It's absolutely stunning place, and our ancestors, I invite you to come and see, actually, but this is supposed to depict a woman giving birth, and actually in the petroglyph you can distinguish a baby inside the woman's stomach. And it's located at a hot spring. It's directly opposite a hot spring. And our elders believe that this hot water helped to dilate the uterus to assist giving birth. On the right-hand side, we have an image depicting the sacrifice of virgins to calm the lava of this volcano. When the Spanish arrived, they called it the door to hell. Sometimes volcanoes are referred to as goddesses. Sometimes they have names of goddesses. For instance, in Tanzania, Golduinuingai is the mountain of God. Ontak in Japan means the mountain of God, or Fuji, which in Japanese actually means the immortal or the only one. So where does this idea come from? Well, I was walking in Momotombo once in Nicaragua. I was driving and I saw this volcano in front of me, and 20 minutes later it was still there. It was always there. Of course it's not going anywhere, but it's something that's immovable and so omnipresent, let's say, for our ancestors. You can imagine that for them, seeing this mountain, even today, if I see this image with this shadow behind the mountain, it really looks something quite godlike. There are also petroglyphs in this place where you can see these figures and also these bowls dug out in the ground, which are locations where rituals used to be carried out by our ancestors. Let's look at Costa Rica then. Where is it? And why is it a little bit different to the Canary Islands? Well, Costa Rica, in fact, has all of the basic ingredients for active volcanoes and earthquakes. But our volcanoes are formed in a slightly different way, via subduction. What this means is that a tectonic plate, in this case the Cocos plate, goes underneath the Caribbean plate. This is a geological process that creates earthquakes and volcanic explosions, volcanic eruptions that are particularly explosive in our case. This image is part of a research project that we're doing right now, investigating how earthquakes have an impact on volcanic eruptions. Volcanoes in Costa Rica are places where you can find quite unique ecosystems. Alexander Humboldt, the German scientist, travelled around the equator to look at how ecosystems change. He found it interesting, rather than travelling around to lots of places, to stay in one place but to change in altitude, to see what differences occurred at different levels of altitude. In Costa Rica we have a very unique marine ecosystem in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the Isla del Coco. We also have a dry and wet tropical forest, and we also have these extremophiles. So this means organisms that are able to survive in very, very high temperatures. And the image that you see at the top is the highest forest that we have in our region, which is home to microorganisms that live inside the lake. They're subaquatic plants. So all of these are examples of life systems that exist inside our volcanoes. So we also have people that coexist with volcanoes. 2 million actually live on active volcanoes. Our two main airports are located on top of volcanic areas. So this gives you an idea of the risk that we're living under. This image was taken in 1963, and on the right-hand side, we see the same place. Actually, John F. Kennedy went to visit Costa Rica. He saw this volcanic eruption on the left that released so much ash. But you can see 70 years or 60 years later, things have changed. It's effusive volcanism in the Arenal volcano, so this was erupting over 40 years, but we also have explosive volcanism, for instance the Poas volcano, which occurred in 2017. We only had 3 days notice before this volcano erupted. How many volcanoes are there? Well, we talk about 200, but really we're not sure because there's so many. And we have this underwater mountain range, the biggest in the American continent. It seems to be connected, in fact, with the Galapagos Islands and the Coco Island. There are so many underwater that it's very challenging to identify all of the volcanoes that exist. We have another volcanic mountain range called the Guanacaste. Number 3 is the Tilarán, and number 4 is the Central Range. So our volcanoes are located on this main ridge that crosses across the country. When I talk to people in Costa Rica about our volcanoes, I show them how they're present in our day-to-day lives. 60% of people that visit us come to see a volcano, or they visit a volcano during their trip. So it's a big part of our tourism. We also have hotels and beers, of course, that are really delicious. We have volcanic emblems on all of these products, and even our coat of arms for our country shows volcanoes. So you can see in some of these images that there's smoke coming out of the volcanoes. And we even carry volcanoes in our pockets because they're depicted on our coins. My mission then at my NGO is to put this puzzle together, to assemble this image in a more clear way of a volcanic country. Also, thanks to our volcanoes, there are many sources of energy. Actually, our energy is 100% renewable. We don't use fuel for electricity. Rather, we rely on hydroelectricity and other forms. We have the geothermal project at Miravalles, and we have wind farms in the Orosi Valley, which is situated in surrounded by volcanoes. So volcanoes help us to achieve this goal of having 100% renewable energy. We also have gastronomy that is particular to these volcanic areas. Anyone who comes to Costa Rica must try the rice and beans available in different formats. We also have tamales, which is a recipe typical at Christmas time. Our strawberries are absolutely delicious. We have many other recipes. And most of our agricultural land is located on volcanic areas. Coriander and salads usually has some kind of influence from volcanoes, even your milk that you drink in the morning. So every visit to Costa Rica is full of volcanic flavors. we created this idea to be a volcanologist for a day. We actually got this idea from visiting Olot. We saw that the gastronomy was very linked to the volcanoes, and the guides that took us around the area were volcanologists. So now let's see our second video, please. So this is the activity, this project to be a volcanologist for a day. This is our most important project. So we teach them about different minerals, we do different experiments, we look at the different rocks that are emitted from the volcanoes, we visit communities that have been affected by the communities, we look at the lava flows, the rivers that have formed in this area. It's a very interactive experience. People really get to discover how volcanoes behave. We have children, very young children sometimes, and also older people participating. We've had around 1,200 participants so far in this project. And the idea is for them to see geology and volcanoes as something beautiful, the same way that we see it, volcanologists. So we've been working on it, as I say, for some time now, and we would love you to visit us if you do make it to Costa Rica one day. It began in 2018, actually, and of course with the pandemic we had to press the pause button, but our goal is to restart this project in the near future. Thank you. Let's go back to the presentation now. Great. So one of the other things that we try to teach the population, teach children, is how to coexist with these volcanoes. This project is called Monte Olimpo. This was, of course, the home of the ancient Greek gods, and also the biggest star in our solar system. The biggest mountain, in our solar system is called Mount Olympus. It's on Mars. We ask them what they think a volcano is, and then we have a talk about it. And then we ask them to show us their drawings before and after having this informative talk about volcanoes. So beforehand you can see that they've drawn a huge volcano. When children draw something big, it means that they find it intimidating. And we can see in the second picture they've drawn a volcano much smaller. You can even see the different particles, the lapilli, the things that have been belched out of the volcano. Here's another example. Once again, we can see a big volcano on the left. You can see the houses right below. And after our program, I at least see a much calmer volcano. You can at least see the sun in the background. It seems a much more calm and harmonious picture. You can even see the lake here of Boas as well. I think this is a good way of measuring the impact of an educational program like this. I personally work in research, but also with communities. As scientists, we are trusted, we're competent, we have integrity, and we're open enough to be able to talk with other people about these issues. So our approach then is that if we offer up knowledge to people, if you come to our area and we teach you about it, this will lead to prevention, and with that, vulnerability decreases. At the same time, if you know more about the place where you live, then you're more likely to take care of it. This will encourage citizen participation and taking ownership of your territory. With that, we have resilience. It's a very commonly used word nowadays. In Latin American, we have a very short memory, even more so when it comes to disasters. After 3 months, we've forgotten completely what happened. But with this process, we remember. With this knowledge, with this increase of emphasis on historical memory, this could promote more interest in science in later generations, just like the pandemic will perhaps produce. And all of this together should improve people's lives. There is a Japanese premise after the 2011 earthquake. Children went to a place called Kamaishi. They were evacuated there when the tsunami arrived. They were evacuated before. And these were the premises. Don't believe everything that you hear and take initiative. Sometimes, however, volcanoes need space. We need to give them that space. And for example, the Rincón de la Vieja erupted very violently around 3 months ago. The Arenal had a great deal of pyroclastic material launched out. It seems that these days young people try to get close to these volcanoes to get likes on their social media, and unfortunately this encourages other people to also get too close to the volcanoes. And this is an increasing problem that we're seeing in Costa Rica, especially in the case of these explosive volcanoes, because often they give no warning. And if there are people nearby, then, well, they're in serious danger. The Poas volcano did give us a couple of days notice, and we were able to close the park before the eruption. Of course, in a way it's good that it did erupt, because if scientists predict an eruption that doesn't happen, then we lose all credibility. But we were able to predict it, and we were successful in our prediction. I felt like I just scored the winning goal in a World Cup, because it's so hard actually to read these signals of these volcanoes. And it was a way of saying, well, we're not that silly after all. Irasu is another volcano that had a quite violent eruption around 60 years ago, and the Turrialba, which is always bothering us. There are lots of different risks involved with our volcanoes. In La Palma, you have these long lava flows, which is something that we don't struggle so much with, but we have different gases, acidic gases, which can accumulate in the air and can be very dangerous. We have these ballistic explosions, these materials that fly out very long distances. We also have these lahares. This is a combination of volcanic rock and water, and they accumulate in many areas in Costa Rica, and also ash, which can of course travel a great distance, affect our agriculture and air traffic. So to work with all of these issues, we have a National Commission for Emergencies. It has quite a complex structure, at least I think it looks a bit complex here. When you're talking about managing risks, there should be a very simple structure in a way. But this is basically the way we work to try and prepare ourselves for the next eruption, because we know it's going to come. To finish, I'd like to end with one quote from the Secretary General of the UN. He said, if I had to write a sentence to describe the state of the world, I'd say that we're living in a world where global challenges are much more integrated and the responses are much more fragmented. And if this isn't corrected, then we will be heading for disaster. So with this, the idea is that we all live on the same planet and we need to learn to live in harmony with volcanoes. This is a bit of an advert. I love cooking. I'm an amateur, really not pro at all, but this is my very simple version of pyroclastic cooking. So I'm thrilled to be here to learn from you wonderful chefs at this conference. That's everything from me. Thank you.
Fascinante la gestión.
Fascinating, really amazing the way you manage the project and the way you explain your project. The president of Volcanoes Without Borders, thank you, Gina Gonzalez. It was a lot of fun to listen to you. And let's continue dressing all these volcanic ecosystem with gastronomy, hot cuisine. In this case, we are going to move to the Philippines, a specific area, namely Bicol, a region that has not only the problem of a volcano, which is the Mayon active stratovolcano, and another problem which is the typhoons that they have. And what explains what I just said is just a hard territory where survival is almost a success. And the next person that will be with us is one of the best chef in the Philippines, one of the best chefs in Asia. He moves from Cantabria, northern Spain, to Philippines, and he has a reference restaurant in Philippines, which is the Gallery by Chele in Manila, and he will show us how the people from a specific region that apparently have all the problems of the world, the volcano, the typhoons, have made up of their territory and of some of the scarce products that they have in their territory, to make them feel proud about and to survive. With all of us, Chele González.
¿Estás ahí, Chele?
Sí.
Bueno,
que...
Woof, I have so many things here to expect. Thank you, all of you. I think that we have a small problem with the audiovisual presentation. We need a few minutes until they're sorted out, but we can talk about what I mentioned before, that you've delivered a great job. Apart from your work at several restaurants, the cosmopolitan restaurants that you have, hot cuisine, you've delivered a very personal work in a geographical region, which is the Bicol region. Yeah, before I came back to Spain, I just had to come back for personal reasons. And from May to June, we went to Bicol and carried out some documentary films similar to Netflix, but an Asian documentary film. And for reasons that I cannot explain, I have the chance to travel around the Philippines and be always on the way. And that allows me to visit really hidden places, to get to know communities and get to know how people live in those regions. And that is a source of inspiration, and that will be translated into the menu. And it was in the Mayon volcano where we were just cooking dishes prepared, on the bottom of the near the volcano, and Chele has been living for a couple of years in Philippines, has written a few books, and is one of the greatest experts in Philippine cooking, right? So now apparently the audiovisual is prepared, so you can start with your presentation. Okay, let me see if I understand how this works. This is my restaurant, Gallery by Chele. And here you can see Rodrigo. He's with me here on stage. And he was the D+R chef. Now he has his own restaurants in the north of Spain. One of them is La Brava. And thanks to him, I could compile the presentation, because at the moment there are 10 days quarantine in the South Asia. Things are a little bit complicated. To travel through China is also complicated, and we had to do everything remotely with my team in the Philippines and Rodrigo, who is here with me. So let's talk a little bit about Philippines as a volcanic region. It's one of the countries with the highest number of active volcanoes of the world. We're talking about an archipelago with 7,000 islands. And this is the Mayon volcano, where we had a very nice experience that we would like to explain and show through a documentary film today. I'm going to show you a video so that your mindset is in the Mayon region and in the Bicong region.
Bueno, como decía un poquito.
As Xavi mentioned before, let's explain who we are, what we do, to explain why we are near the Mayon volcano. I just went to the Philippines about 11 years ago, and obviously I'm a traveler. I went to Philippines with 2 jackets, a drive with all my recipes. I didn't know a single person, and I started to construct my new life. So starting so and being a curious person, and my curiosity opened some doors and helped me to discover what was hidden in the villages and the beautiful country. And we started to work with endemic products, with local communities, wild products too, and with tons of people, producers, fishers. You know, with nature, there's so many things and stories that we developed a menu based on those histories that we experience, what we learn, trying to give a voice to all the people that have contributed to our menus. And probably I will have an idea today in Lanzarote, and probably I will change a dish based on the local products that I find here. But let me show you another short video of how we work in our restaurant and gallery. We have many restrictions. We have many difficulties originated by the pandemic. But just to sit at the restaurant is an experience itself, is kind of a journey. We want to travel along the community's producers and friends.
Octe. Bueno, al final, como ves,
So as you see, we tell stories and we tell something which is very important. I'm Spanish, and as I said, about 11 years ago, I traveled to the Philippines, and when I was there, I thought that Thailand was nearer than Philippines. Is a big distance, but the cultures are quite near, and the gastronomy is linked too, and that is something that we try to emphasize as well. Here we see the Aeta community, the Aboriginal people from native town in Philippines. The first time I got in touch with them, it was about 7 years ago through a documentary report that I had to do. I just went to Pancanca, near to the Pinatubo volcano. The relationship with these communities is very difficult. You need to have a Sherpa, someone that trusts you. You have to be introduced by a second person. So while we were climbing to visit, we could see the lava flows that happened here in 1991, and you could talk about that. The first thing that happened was to see what happened in the past and how they had to relocate and change part of their habits and their culture as a consequence of that eruption in 1991. So it was very present in their daily lives, and they mention it continuously. So they are the fathers somehow that had to adapt. But there's something positive of that, and I will mention quite several times along my presentation that, namely, that land became more fertile with a better product, and they finally realized that that was the positive part. And this is something that I experienced. This was in January 2020, just before the pandemic. This is the Thai volcano, which is in Taytay, 1.5 hours away from Manila. This paralyzed the city. All of us had to start wearing face masks before the pandemic, and see how the volcano exploded and all the ashes that it gushed up. The last eruption was in March 2021. I work there for a hotel, and we had to close everything and stop the business for several days. There were ashes all over. And that's part of a daily dive, That is, this volcano is about 1.5 hours away. But the positive side of this story, because we always have to keep in mind the positive side, this is our vegetable garden. Here you can grow the best vegetables and fruits that are brought to Manila. This is kind of the vegetable garden. And as I said, thanks to that, we can cultivate those products. This is the Mayon volcano, the highest one. It's active and is in the Bicol region. The Bicol region is in the center of the Philippines, in the Pacific area, namely the one that is nearest to the Pacific Ocean. And the Bicanian region say, we suffer all natural disaster, typhoons, volcanoes, and they kind of feel to be a very resilient community. And thanks to that concept, they say that the taro leaves, the ones that you see there, is similar to the yam. They're very resistant, and there's no typhoon that can kill them. And thanks to those leaves, they might survive. About 3 weeks ago, I visited them, and there are many dishes that are prepared with this taro or yam leaves, and they treat it and talk about it with passion as something that really belongs to the culture, because they said that without those leaves, they would have never ever survived to some of the disasters. Another one is the coconut milk. When you talk about Bicol regional cuisine, the yam leaf and the coconut milk are basic products to cook with. So I'm going to show you a video about our trip, because words cannot show what we really experience in those communities that we have visited.
Lumaki ako dito sa Albay kung saan sikat ang Mount Mayon. Natuto ako magluto dahil sa aking tatay at lola kung saan meron kaming maliit na business o maliit na kainan. Nung nagtatrabaho na ako dito sa Socorro's Restaurant, yung pakikisama at pakikisalamuha ko sa mga magsasaka, sa komunidad, ay naging daan para mapanatili at ma-preserve yung culinary tradition dito. Ang gabi leaves na tumutubo dito sa Kamalig ay kakaiba at espesyal kasi nabubuhay lang sila sa matabang lupa na sakop ng Mount Mayon. Yung mga dahon ng gabi ay tamang-tama lang sa tigas at lambot para makapagluto ka ng isang masarap at magandang putahe.
When the food grows, it will really affect the dishes. In this case, we are in Mount Mayon, the most famous volcano in the Philippines, where is a volcano soil, and the taro leaves are very particular. We are going to be focused in pinacat, a very unique dish that have 3 unique components. The taro leaves from this rich volcano soil, the famous coconut milk from Bicol, and another protein. But also very important, the technique, that is slow simmering and is the slow cooking. To learn this, we are going to meet Chef Atto from Socorro's restaurant. He is going to explain and show us all the process of this beautiful dish.
Hi, Chef Chelly.
Hello.
Welcome to Kamalig. As you can see, we have a beautiful Mount Mayon. Aside from that, we have a special dish here in Kamalig, which is the pinangat. This is the taro leaves. Dito lang makukuha to sa Kamalig, Albay. Walang ibang lugar na katulad nito.
So this is very special.
Di siya masyadong matigas, di siya masyadong malambot, balance.
It is very interesting how taro leaves are used in different dishes around the region. This time, I think because the soil, volcano soil, it was extremely different and very, very unique. I learned 2 techniques today. One it was how to smoke the coconut milk, and that gave me some ideas of how can I do the dish and maybe use that techniques for the sauce.
This is one also, gagawin natin one of the ingredients natin. Ito yung young coconut leaves. Lukay in Kamalig, Albay. Lemongrass. Mamaya papakita natin kung paano paggawa ng pinangat. You're gonna have a full taro leaves. Okay, you're gonna cut this. You're gonna remove the stem like this.
So this one we are going to make the package.
Yeah,
This size is okay?
it's very good.
You don't boil it or anything like that?
Masarap pag kinakamay.
Okay, good.
Then that's right, that's enough. Put this and the ingredients we're gonna put inside little by little.
So we have 2 different leaves to make the package.
Yeah.
And this is burro,
This is burro. This is
fermented
the,
fish.
This is the sea salt catfish.
What is this?
Fermented little shrimp.
Okay,
this
and the last
alamang,
one is garlic.
garlic and the ginger. In your country, Chef Chelly, do you have like this taro leaves?
Definitely, this is super exotic for me.
Wow.
Despite that I have been 10 years in the Philippines, still, this is the first time that I do this technique.
Ah,
With Chef Atto, It was very beautiful how to learn how to use this endemic produce. But of course, as a chef, for me what it was mind-blowing, it was the different technical process behind this dish. So majority is really vegetable, right?
Vegetable. Optionally, you can put pork or chicken if you like. Like this.
So this is young coconut, so also gives some flavor. I found pinagat very exotic, incredible for a foreign, especially Western countries. We don't have this kind of approach or technique or this. Of course, when you add all of the lemongrass, all of those exotic as well spices, it became something very creative in the way I can approach when I go back to the restaurant and I can see things in my own perspective. So in somehow, it have a connection with Lain.
Yeah.
Both cooking in coconut milk. Pinagat, this, again, is a different approach. We are in Bicol, where everything goes with coconut milk. Taro leaf is also a very important part of the Bicolano gastronomy. I believe when I eat it is very different what I have experienced in Manila, for example. It's like a personality in the dish itself. The meaty also, and I will say that majority will be a vegetarian dish. Then you have some accents of the alaman and the burro to give some saltiness, but majority is very meaty. So it's a very particular texture. Chef Atto, aside to be delicious, is super interesting from me. This is the first time I see this technique. Thank you very much. It's a really inspiration for me, learning this technique from YouTube today, and so tasty and amazing this.
You're already welcome to it.
Now in the restaurant we are going to base the dish in these three elements. One is going to be taro leaves. Actually, it was extremely difficult to get in Manila fresh taro leaves. For me, that is one of the magic of the dish itself. Finally, we get it, and then we are going to cook it or simmer it in advance. And then the protein that we are going to use is going to be ulang or river prawns, because it has sense for me since they were using fermented fish. We are going to cook separately the ulang in all of the aromatics that is in the dish. Lemongrass, ginger, the garlic. It's gonna be in an oil that we will use also the third part, or the third element, that is gonna be the coconut milk. The coconut, we're going to smoke it, same technique that we use with Chef Atto. So the coconut milk, it will be infused or simmered with the heads of the prawn, of the ulang, and with all this aromatic oil. And then we will add something at the end to give more texture to the dish. That is gonna be fried alaman, that is also part of the traditional dish. And then to add something different and sophisticated to give more complexity, we are going to add dill oil, perfectly combined with the earthy and aromatic notes of the taro leaves. It was a beautiful experience to cook with Chef Atto and learn more about the endemic produce. And also it was amazed by the different layers and technical process behind this dish. Pues esto fue un documental que hicimos para...
This is a documentary film that we produced for a chain similar to Netflix that is called Troy D. And we're going to prepare something similar but with local produce, because I couldn't bring things from Philippines. I'm really excited for two reasons. First of all, because of this. Look at this amazing huge red prawns, right? That they brought them tomorrow. The ones that are going to have dinner with us are going to try it. And then some produce from my region. This is Bertha, which is it's kind of like kale leaves. We had to collect it on Sunday with a huge suitcase with that kale leaves, and to be able to mix those leaves and those big red prawns, mixing Lanzarote with Cantabria and Philippines. So there's a lot of heart in this experiment. Okay, so look how fresh the red prawn is. I mean, yesterday we couldn't even peel it, because it was so fresh. So we could remove only the heads. So we prepared an aromatic oil, and that's where the Southeast Asia comes, with ginger, garlic, chili, oil, and we've simmered it for about 4 minutes. So what we did was we just covered all these aromas with this prawn. So tomorrow, when you try it, we'll make a culinary journey to the Southeast Asia. And what we also do, we have simmered or blanched these kale leaves, just like the taro leaves would be simmered. And we have prepared some packages with the leaves. We have already prepared them for now. I don't like the one that I took. I'm sorry, I'm going to change it. You know how picky the chefs are. Okay. So what we're going to do with this piece of leaf is we're going to remove the plastic foil. And it was inspired during that journey, and starting from that inspiration, we prepare the dish the way we do it, with our own inspiration. So we introduce a stick on the back to keep the shape. Now we're going to remove the tail so we can eat the whole thing. We put it there. Wow, it's huge. Now we wrap it, but the leaf that I took is a little bit too short for what I want to do. Maybe I would just move it to another leaf that is a little bit bigger. And Rodrigo, you can start cooking that and explain what we're going to do. With all the remaining parts of the leaf, we have just chopped it and we're going to saute it. I don't like to discard anything. We produce a sustainable kitchen with the same aromas. We're going to keep the purity, to keep those flavors, the garlic, the ginger, and onion with our technique. When we cook it and it has this wonderful texture, you don't need to saute it. It's already done. It is sweet but crunchy. Now my colleague is sauteing, is preparing all the aromas so that all those flavors are kept in the oil. And okay, that's something that we will simply saute and use it as a basis underneath the red prawn, or as we call it in Spanish, carabinero. We're going to place it here and we're going to wrap the red prawn Okay. With the K leaf, now one is already wrapped. And this is the one we were going to steam now, right? Do we have the steamer on? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to steam it for 2 minutes. We want it to be slightly cooked. At the beginning, the sauce was white, but with this produce, the sauce will not be white any longer. It will turn pink with the ginger, the chili, the garlic. And now we're going to saute the heads so we get all the aromas, right? So we cook it with high heat to release all the oils and what we call the coral, which is the product that is contained in the head, right? We're gonna add the milk, that's the coconut milk. And we're going to let it simmer for about 20-25 minutes. And here is the sauce already finished, right? I mean, you're seeing the first step and the last step, and that's that rosé color that you get after cooking the heads, right? And now we're going to prepare the plates and prepare the dish. So let's go over to the other end, make a little bit of space so we can work. Let's see how it looks like. We have the sauce on the one hand, the oil, and we have already sauteed the red prawn, and that's something that I really love from Philippine cuisine, namely, which is a key factor in their gastronomy. They call alaman. Alaman is like little tiny shrimp, dehydrated shrimp that we have fried, and this is like umami. We have the purity of the red prawn, you know, and being coherent with the plate that we want to prepare. So now let's use the steamer. And here we have the coconut and shellfish sauce with the coriander oil, with the, coriander, ginger, and we are going to cover it, beautifully cover it with the sauce. So that coriander contributes to that aromatic dish. The next step will be to add the alaman, that crispy tiny shrimp that I mentioned before. It will give it that crispy texture, umami and flavor, because by the end of the day what we're looking for is nice flavors. And you're going to finish with some coriander sprouts, so that we have also some fresh texture to our dish. And here is our red prawn from Lanzarote, wrapped in Cantabrian Calais with that Southeast Asian flavor. And tomorrow you're going to try this dish. Wow, this is a real flavor eruption in a mixture of flavors, but we really understood it. Yeah, it's very coherent, it's a proximity, and in this case we have the origin, part of your origins. Yeah, the only way I know how to cook is using local produce, and that's what I love to do. Thank you so much, Shelley Gonzalez from Philippines.
Todo un ejemplo.
Well, once again another example of where combination can be very fruitful. It's not about copying, it's about taking inspiration, combining concepts. So when we have a chef from Cantabria that's in Lanzarote but has actually built his career in the Philippines, creates a project, a dish that embodies these three, it can be the source of great inspiration. So, to continue with this journey that we're going on today about the ecosystems, the people, the cuisine of all these different places, I think now is the time for quite an interesting point in our agenda. We're joined today by a real eminent figure in the world of volcanoes. He has a PhD in earth sciences, and he's going to talk to us about, well, one of the important parameters that I think are key for this Congress, but for the future, not just in Lanzarote, but all volcanic areas with Lanzarote as its capital. He's going to talk to us about this scientific outreach that we're narrowing in on today, communication about ancient volcanic activity and of course the types of tourism that this can create. He actually has put in the title of his speech today, "What's at Stake in Volcanism, in all of these fields." Frédéric Lécuyer.
Excuse me.
No, tenías razón, estabas aquí, pero yo estaba mirando para allí.
Just don't wait me where you think I am not.
No. Don't worry. Please, the mic is yours.
Thank you.
The microphone.
Yeah, I have.
It's yours.
It's
So
me.
please.
Okay, I need that. Hi, I'm as Mr. say, I'm Frédéric Lécuyer, and I'm a geologist. First, I'm a geologist, but I decided to be a geologist. It's a long time ago because I decided to be a geologist. I was 10 years old. But I don't live, at least, on the territory of volcanoes because I was born in the north of France, in a place whose name Picardy, and there is no volcano. So I start my study in geology in the city of Lille, north of France, where we study sedimentology, where we study tectonic, but volcanoes are a joke. Until I was in the first year of masters, and there is a man who arrived in Lille, who was professor in Lille, just arrived, and he asked to make a field work on old volcanoes. Old volcanoes is in the French Massif Central, named Aubrac. Old volcanoes, I say old volcanoes, is between 9 and 6 million years ago. And I study for the first time, it was yesterday, it was in 1990. So sorry, that's not I'm French and that's not my language. English is not my language. So it was in 1984, yesterday, geologically yesterday. And okay, I study volcanoes, I make a map around a place whose name is Saint-Ursiz, and I discover volcanoes like that. Okay, my problem was that I work like a geologist on volcanoes without going on active volcanoes. Yeah, there is something wrong. So the same years, I go on. Well, I meet a man. Maybe you know him. is Maurice Kraft. And he said to me, because I want to see an active volcano, he said to me, it's good to go to the Stromboli volcano because it is still active. It's 3,000 years ago. So if you go there, you see it will be the devil if you not see activity. So I go. And during the same year, 1984, I stay one night on the top of the volcano, and I catch a virus. Oh no, not this one, not this. The virus of volcanoes. And so I decided after this master, because I work on Aubrac for my master, I decided to work after on active volcanoes. And I decided also, because I teach, after then I teach almost 10 years on the college and high school. And I come back to make a thesis in Clermont-Ferrand, where there is a big laboratory of magmatology and volcanology. And I decided to, because I was professor on college, and I decided to make a scientific diffusion, and it starts the first time with television, on Gaumont television and French Antenne 2 television. And a man, maybe you know also, is Arun Taziev. I drive these people in Indonesia. I start to go in Indonesia in 1989. And after, I do some books. And I do many books. The first one I do was translate in 7 languages. So I do it with Time Life. And it was translated in English, German, Netherlands, Swedish, Italian, and it was also translated in Spanish. Oh, this one is a reduced version. Normally it was bigger, but it reduced during the time, I think so. And so I write also other books and magazines. I created a magazine in 2003, sorry. And that's the first part, maybe, of the different way you can do scientific diffusion. What is scientific diffusion? It's to learn to the people. So I do books, you see. I do. I create a society in 1999. After my thesis, I create a society, and response to the desire to Vulcania. The Vulcania was. When we create them, was the museum of volcano, the biggest museum of volcano in the world, and we do that during three years. Vulcania was, Vulcania is situated in French Massif Central, and we do a lot of things, work, drive some society on the volcanoes, and so on. What can I say more? So just for that. I make film myself. I make conferences. There is a lot of different things you can do to make diffusion, scientific diffusion, and I think that the society was called Media Volcan, and scientific diffusion is a media. And what is the interest of that? You have to continue to learn. You make a thesis, you form yourself in volcanology, and after then, when you go to visit active volcanoes, I don't say more things than the professor Marty and the other, I don't remember your name, sorry. The 2 other volcanologists say before, you see that the volcanoes are not unique. There are big volcanoes, there are small volcanoes, and the only way to know how the volcanoes are working is to go and to see them, to study them. And when you go on active volcanoes, during my experience, I meet two types of peoples: tourists, and in the tourists there are a kind of tourists who are well catch. They also catch the virus of volcanoes, and I call them kind of peoples volcanophile. From the Greek philos, who means the people who are loving the volcanoes. And I am a volcanophile. I think all the volcanologists, the second type of the people you can see on volcano, I think that's all the volcanologists are also volcanophile. But the people who are only volcanophile doesn't really understand volcanoes, because they go, they see, but they have not the basis to understand how volcanoes are working. And that's a problem, because sometimes they go to the scientific diffusion too, and they say, I say silliness, because they have not the basis of geology to understand the volcanoes. Excuse me. So, what is important in scientific diffusion? The scientific diffusion make understanding volcanoes by the people who doesn't who live on volcanoes, but the other one, and it's very important to be clear, to be professional, and to know very well volcanoes if you want to do scientific diffusion. I think that's the primary things to do. And how his diffusion, scientific diffusion, is to explain how and why the volcanoes exist and work. And qu'est-ce que j'ai mis là? Excuse me, but I signed for speaking in French, and they say to me after then, you have to speak English. Sorry for my poor English. Yeah, so it's very important to be clear, and I want to give an example of this kind of intervention. We see one in Costa Rica, but in the French, what was the name of in English? Island of Réunion, the Piton de la Fournaise. There was a lot, is still active, maybe one of the most active volcanoes in the world. And so the people around are sometimes afraid, and the people, the men who work at the observatory in Piton de la Fournaise decided to make, to form the children, and they go to the school with psychologists. And they make after a book, and they say that they explain to the children how is working the volcanoes, who it is, where it is dangerous, where it is not, why sometimes we have a caldera also, whose name Enclos Fouquet, and when the eruptions are in the caldera, there is no danger. And in 2007, it was, they say, the eruption of the century. So that was almost the third or the fifth, I don't remember exactly, eruption of the century. But it was really a big and very impressive eruption. And nearby the wall of the caldera, you have the lava fountains who get up 100 meters. The wall of the caldera is 100 meters, and the lava fountains go up the 100 meters. And there was a village nearby. And
subieron por encima de esa pared, y el pueblo que se sitúa por debajo de esa caldera estaban aterrados. Y los niños explicaban a los adultos que no pasaba nada, que no había peligro. Y fueron los niños que explicaron que a pesar de que se viera las fuentes de lava, no corría peligro. Y ese fue el resultado de esa divulgación científica. Una divulgación científica bien hecha. Yo soy mediador científica y es nuestro papel hacer esto.
Indonesia is a little bit my second country. At first, I want to also to speak Indonesian for this communication. Tapi saya pikir Anda tidak bisa mengerti bahasa Indonesia ya? No, you don't understand Indonesia. I think so. Okay, I continue in English. Yeah, yeah, so it's better. So in Indonesia, they use. It's a long time ago. I see the volcanology in Indonesia become years after years better. And they have things to do that. They have a lot of observatory. You know that Indonesia is the country in the world where there is the most important number of volcanoes. 130 volcanoes, active volcanoes in Indonesia. And they have almost 90 volcanoes under survey, because the population of Indonesia is almost 266 million people. So, for example, a volcano like Merapi in the center of Java, there is almost, I don't know actually, but almost 30 million persons around. That's the problem of the volcanology, for the volcanologists too, and for the government too. Huh? So, in Indonesia, a normal, I don't speak about the 7 observatory around the Merapi, because he is very dangerous, because there is a lot of persons. But a normal observatory in Indonesia, that's 2 persons, almost seismometer and seismograph also. And there is one old, no, not old, say senior, a senior, that's not exactly a volcanologist, say they are technician. They take care about what happened, they learn how to read seismograph, but they are in charge of that. And so the old one, the ancients, that's not because he is old, but it's because he have more experience. He's with a youngest one, and he formed the youngest one. That's a form of scientific diffusion, or technical diffusion, but it's almost the same. And these people are moving all around Indonesia. Next time I was in Sinabung in Sumatra, it was almost in 2016, I meet a technician who became the old one. Maybe he is, actually he's 40 years old, but he drive the observatory of Lokan Nempung in the north of Sulawesi. But he was in Sumatra. I say, oh, Farid, what do you do here? You are not in your observatory. He say, yes, but I help the people from Sinabung, because Sinabung entered in eruption in 2010 after almost 1,000 years without eruption. So there was an observatory, but the people on the observatory were not really prepare with that. So he was there to help. He was there also, he say, I learn things different from the Lokan. And so they make a lot of things who form the people, and with changing the place during a few weeks, a few months, it depends. And I think it's a good way to a country where there is a lot of volcanoes. And other things, it was on the observatory of Papandayan. Papandayan also was a volcano who erupted in 2002. I go there during the eruption, and the people speak to me about something really, I think it's funny. The senior, before the eruption, was sick. So he stayed at home because he was sick it was serious. And the young one arrived one day on the observatory, and he see the seismograph, sorry, old seismograph, not on computer, like that. And the seismograph was crazy. He said it was crazy. I don't understand what happened. He never see that. Normal. The last eruption was 70 years ago. So he cut the recording of the eruption. And on the house of the senior, there was a neighbor who come, knocked at the window of the man, and he say, "Oh, you see?" And there was a plume 4 kilometers high. I said, "Oh!" And he ran to the. You see that is important. Then there is somebody who is have more experience on volcanoes, and so all the volcanologists in Indonesia and us, we love for these things. Was no problem. So Indonesia Indonesia is a country where there is a lot of eruption, and they have a lot of experience. If one is missing, there is another one who can find. That's not a problem. What I can say to you also. Oh, ça me fait de l'ombre. I want to speak about my experience of the last week, because I was on La Palma last week, and I learned things very important. The things I learned is, you know what a scoria cone is. Scoria cone is you can see scoria cone everywhere in the world. That's the more comment on dit? Maybe almost 90%, 80% of the eruption in the world I made from scoria cone. But the scoria cone, there are different kinds. For example, when you go on the Piton de la Fournaise, you find scoria cone with really hot lava, and the lava, when she falls down, is molten. And you make what the name is spatter cone. That's all the lava who arrived is locked by the other one, and it's like glue. So that's the first kind of scoria cone. But the main type of scoria cone is, you can find it on Piton de la Fournaise also, but you can find it on Etna. We have seen a photo of the Etna. That's the volcanoes who is in all the mind of the people. Okay, the cone like that with the crater, and the cone is made like with stones who are rolling like that, and it's scoria cones. Often we say Strombolian cone also. The lava is molten when it's go, and when it fall down, is rocks. So it's only comment on dit un tas de cailloux? Yeah, rocks. I mean rocks. No, but it's a yeah. It's rocks. We say scoria. It can be bomb. Bombs. It's a size of the big one. Bigger than 10 centimeters until meters, it's bomb or block. You mean rock? Yeah, rock. That's rock. Stones, yeah. Thank you. No, that's this form. When you put sands on the ground, it makes in English. Oh, c'est pas grave. C'est un tas. On dit un tas en français. En français, on dit un tas. Un tas. C'est pas grave, c'est pas très important. So that's the second and the more important type of cone of scoria cone. In 2001, I see a cone. The cone who is in La Palma, Cumbre Vieja, remind me. It was called Laghetto or Piano del Lago, and it was lava was getting out on at first during the winter. There is snow, and the snow come inside the cinder and stay in the cinder. And when the lava meets the water, it makes hydrovolcanic explosion, very strong explosion. The Laghetto make explosion, you can hear as far as 50 kilometers in Catania. And that was not a Strombolian cone, is like that, he have the same shape, but it was hydrovolcanic formation. When I go to Cumbre Vieja, I see a cone, I stay 6 days there, and I see the cone changing. He do spatter cone, like in La Fournaise. He do cone normally, like in the Stromboli or Etna. And he do also, he was in contact with water, he do hydrovolcanic explosion. And I've never seen that. Changing so fast, and but he stay a cone of scory. So every time I go, like the Indonesian who are changing, I learn new things, new things and new information about volcanoes. How a cone like Cumbre Vieja can be so amazing, I think it was. Yeah, it's very important to explain that the changement, like from the cone of Cumbre Vieja, if it's dangerous or not, that's very important to explain to the persons who are around the volcanoes how they can have to react or something like that. And I think that's our job to do that. Scientific, I see the two prestations of the scientific who were before me are for myself very well for diffusion scientific, but sometimes they are too busy to do that, and there is interesting to have some people who do that like it. What can I do? I want to say that volcanology is to the service of population during crisis, but I think it will be important to anticipate, like in Piton de la Fournaise, like in I don't remember. Sometimes, and I think also, and I say that, yeah, to anticipate, like in, yeah, in Costa Rica, they do that. I want to say something who say to me the director of VSI, Volcanological Service of Indonesia. It was during the 18. He say, me, I don't care what kind of isotope is in the magma. I don't take care of that. I just want to know when the volcanoes and when the volcanoes is going to erupt and how long it stay in eruption. That was Wimpy Jejep. I want to sit. I think he will be with me at this moment because he said that to me. Just we were speaking about the Indonesian volcanoes at the Directora Vulkanologi, and Wimpy is dead this 14 November, last 14 November 21, and okay. When you are not when you are a volcanophile, and when you are not in your country, you don't have to speak about the volcanoes. I'm volcanologist when I'm in a country who is not mine. I don't speak to the media about the crisis because that's not my job. I'm just explain after what happened. I just explained the volcano for that, but you cannot interfere with volcanologists in charge of the eruption. That's what I think. And if you are volcanophile, it's more important to say nothing. What can I say more? I think it's okay. 1 minute. 1 minute. You have question? I think. Look for. I don't win any money for this one, but it's still interesting. There is not a lot of. We speak on this book. We speak about all the volcanology around the world, but I think it's necessary to make a new one. Voilà. Thanks a lot. I'm sorry, but I was a little bit compressed by the time. I don't give you any visual, but next time I will do it, because I most have the habit to speak about volcanoes than what I'm doing and what is the scientific diffusion. Thank you.
Merci à toi, Frédéric. Merci à toi.
You're welcome.
It's a lot, so much information for so less time.
I hope so.
But
thank you
very much for
yeah.
your information. It's a very, very good information. La verdad es que podíamos estar.
We could spend much more time with Frédéric to get to know all what he has learned, but we have a program to follow and to stick to, so thank you so much. Merci. Okay, we're just about to reach the end of this morning session. It has been great to see the vision that Frédéric has. I think he's a very wise man, and obviously we here in the Canary Islands have an ongoing eruption, but there are many others in the world, and we're here to talk about this, and above all to know how to manage all of it in the near future from all perspectives. So let's finish this morning with a very famous region of the world. We're going to end up in Hawaii, and we're going to finish this morning session with that gastronomic part that teaches the volcanic region, what is unique of those regions, what is that interesting, and how does it link? Is it linked with the in some occasions, very, very antique traditions? We've seen the case of the Philippines, and now we're going to see the case of Hawaii, because the man that is going to take the floor now, the Hawaii Pole Factory, he's not only involved in the kitchen and the gastronomy and volcanic gastronomy, he has always also made an effort to recover the traditions, the usages that we really need today in order to keep on offering the territory and a backbone to all these disseminations. And as far as I know, in Spain and in Europe, the chef of the Hawa poi, liko hoi with O of you. Aloha.
All right. Yeah, maybe we can.
Nos trasladamos, por favor, a...
So we're going to move to Hawaii, to Honolulu, with this liko hoi, the chef.
Yeah. Good pronunciation. Gracias. Ei no ke aku ala iu, hea te ai mai lai puani ani, kaua hi na kailu, na tamahu kai lalo talu. O rale, o hea mai ho mai ua leo, o rai te wai wai, aloha 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 kako. Buenos dias. Buenos dias. Aloha. My name is Liko Ho, and this is my assistant Tony, and we just wanted to send our mahalo, our gracias to the organizers of this conference, and also to the people of this beautiful place, Lanzarote. And we're very happy to be able to share some of our food and some of our experience with the volcanoes. And of course, we come from a place of volcanoes also. I have just mostly pictures, but I have these words that come from our indigenous language, Hawaiian language. And this is basically the theme of our group at the Waiahole Poi factory. And it says, Hanai i ka ai, hanai i ke aloha. And hanai in Hawaiian means to feed people or to nourish. And so we have that 2 times, hanai i ka ai, which means to feed with food. But the second line means hanai i ke aloha, which means to feed with the feeling of aloha, which is love. And that's what we try to do, is to nourish people both physically, but also with the feeling. And I have already felt the aloha, the love from the people here. So thank you very much, and we feel very honored and very welcome to be a part of this. One of our most important foods is the kalo, and so that's why I was really happy to see Chef Shele doing a dish that incorporated kalo, because for Hawaiian people, the taro, or what we call kalo, is probably the most important food that we have. And this image in the back is that same leaf, the kalo leaf in there. Tony, can switch him over. And so we also use the leaf in a very similar way to what we saw from the Philippines, from Chef. But another way that we use the whole plant, and probably the more important way, is actually the root. And so I actually was able to bring some of the kalo roots here, and I'm going to show you the basic process of how we make it into what we call poi. And so this is the poi. We have our pohaku right there. Next one, Tony. Yeah. This is the place that I come from, and this is on the island of Oahu in Hawaii, on the windward side of the island, so away from most of the bigger population and the land that I come from, what we call Aina, is called Hakipu'u, and this is where this picture is taken. And so I'll kind of go right into the pounding, which we call ku'i'ai. And usually I have a nice big papa, a nice big board that's probably about 2 meters long and about 1 meter wide, and it's actually made for 2 people. So you have one person pounding on one side, one person pounding on the other side, and really the kalo is the main food of Hawaiian culture. And so when you pound kalo, you're usually pounding for your whole family. So you pound a lot. So this is a little bit different, you know, for me it's just pounding a little bit, but hopefully it'll kind of give you guys the sense of what kalo is. And so the first step in pounding is just to kind of start to, that one will have to be sacrificed. That'll be on the side. So one of the challenges actually of pounding on a flat surface like this is that the things want to go off to the side. So usually my normal board that I pound on has like a curved surface, so everything stays in, but I'll just have to be a little bit more careful what I'm doing. And now I'll try to kind of explain what I'm doing and talk to you guys, but at the same time I'm speaking with the kalo, and the kalo is telling me different things about, you know, what state it's in and what it needs. And so at this point, I'm getting the kalo to break down into pieces, but after I break it into pieces, I'm actually going to want to get it to stick together again. Yeah. Oh, this thing is coming off a little bit. How's it, Tony? Are you able to get the slide up again, or just going live? Yeah. So I'll just kind of talk then, and yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to share about taro is that you know, our tradition of food comes from, of course, the ocean. And if you look at Hawaii on a map, we're basically right in the middle of the biggest part of ocean in the world, actually, because the Pacific is, you know, the biggest ocean, and we're right in the middle of the biggest part. And part of what that means is that our kupuna, our ancestors, voyaged to get there. And you know, our ancestors left the continent of Asia about 6,000 years ago, and started on journeys, multiple journeys that eventually led them to all of the islands in the Pacific, even Hawaii. And along the way, one of the most important things, of course, which is important to everybody, is sustenance, is eating. And so, especially in the voyages, we had to choose the foods that would be able to sustain us, and not just in one environment, but actually many different types of environments. And so one of the best foods for that is the kalo. And so the kalo was taken throughout all of the islands in the Pacific. And to me, you know, it's one of the examples of how the food that we have as people is connected to. Oops, sorry. Get 'em. It's connected to, of course, the places that we live in, but it's also connected to the history, you know, of an experience of our people. So one of the main things about the experiences of Hawaiian people is that that voyaging through the ocean, and kalo is one of the main foods that allowed us to make that that voyage. So if you look at the kalo itself right now, it's at a stage where I broke it all apart, but now it's come together. So now I kind of move to my next stage in the pounding process, where I can actually really pound it. And so it's going to get a little bit more explosive, I guess, in the volcanic terms. And I needed to be at this stage because otherwise, if I pounded it a little bit earlier, it would all run away. But now you kind of notice that it's basically staying in the same spot. It's not running away. And the goal of the pounding process is to try to get out as much of the what we call pu'u, which is the little lumps, and we're trying to get it as smooth as possible. And one of our chefs here does Japanese food, and this process that we're doing is actually very similar to what they do in Japan for mochi rice. Very similar, but I usually like to tell people that come from Japan that, you know, the process is the same thing. They'll be adding the water like this, and basically the reason for the water is the same as in mochi. If you didn't add this water, it would be stuck. It would be really sticky. It would be all over my hands and the board and everything. But in mochi pounding, it's kind of the opposite. Oh, which reminds me, that's another thing I want to share. The stone is same type of stone as this, basalt, volcanic type stone. But in Japanese mochi pounding, it's kind of like flipped. So usually for Japanese mochi, the bowl that they're pounding in will be made out of stone like this. And then the hammer is made out of wood. So usually, you know, my board would be wood, and my stone, of course, is stone. But in the Japanese style, it's flipped. It's the opposite way. And then the other big difference with Japanese mochi is that usually you gotta have at least two people. So you got one guy that's doing the pounding, and then oftentimes it'll be a husband and wife, and the wife will be the one that's doing the flipping. So one person is doing the flipping, and then the husband is doing the pounding of the kalo. But for Hawaiian poi, we can actually do it with one person. Sorry, I'm making the stage a little wet here. All right. Another aspect of poi, and one of the reasons why it was so important to our people that I wanted to share with you guys today is the poi is kind of conservative in the sense that when you make poi, you make a lot of poi, and you're able to keep it for a long time. So the amount of poi that you'd usually make would last for at least a week or 2 weeks. And what happens is, after it's pounded like this, you're able to let it sour. So it kind of gets like a sourdough, or even like a yogurt, something like that. And that allows you to stretch, that food out over time. Whereas if you just cooked taro and left it unpounded, you would only have maybe like 1 or 2 days to eat it. So like this, you can let it sour, and it can last again for up to 2 or 3 weeks, and still be edible. Yeah. Tony, how are we doing on time? 1:34. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So we're kind of getting pretty close to what the end product would be. This is kind of gives you a sense, at least, of what the poi and the kalo is. So I'm going to kind of clean this up a little bit. Just get it off of the board a little more. This is not the there's still a little bit of what we call a pu'u, which is those little lumps in there. So this is not fully acceptable, I guess, for me. But it gives you the sense, at least. You get the ideal. And if the the conditions were a little bit different, but it's close. It's close. And one thing about poi too is that it can be eaten in different stages of consistency. So this poi is very mochi-like. Very little water in it right now. I've just been adding water to keep it from sticking to the stone and the board. But if I were to take it to full poi, I would add at least double the amount of water, and then you'd start to see it. See, right now it doesn't flow down too easily. When you take it to poi, it actually has it'll flow right down like that. But this is close to what we want. Yeah. Then maybe can we get the rest of the slideshow up a little bit? And I'll leave the poi. I'm gonna call that done, even though in my mind it's not done. But I'm gonna call that done for now. Be satisfied with that for now. All right. And let me take a little bit of this water off you guys' beautiful stage too. All right. Put that right there. Okay, next one, Tony. Yeah, so this is the same place, and it's a little bit of a close-up to see the style of planting that we do. And last night we were able to meet Paulo from the Azores Islands, and he showed us a picture very similar to this. So that really, taro has gotten all around the world, and we've taken it into the Pacific, but it's in the Atlantic also, and it's one of our most important foods. In the Hawaiian story, in the Hawaiian genealogy and Hawaiian history, the taro was actually the elder sibling to the human being. And so we look to the taro, in a sense, not just as food, but actually as family, very close family. So that important to us. Next one, Tony. All right. So you can guess who that is. And I got some nice kalo. This kalo was grown in Waiahole Valley, and got the whole leaf and everything in there. Next one. Yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to share, and originally when I got the invitation and was in contact with Worldcanic organizers, what I really wanted to do was what we call an imu. And this is one of the traditional ways of cooking, especially for taro, because if you know kalo, one of the aspects of kalo is that it has these proteins in it that have to be really well cooked. If it's undercooked, it has an itchiness that is actually beyond itchiness. It's like a pain that it causes. So this is one of the main styles that we use, called the imu. And to me, this picture captures it. It's almost as if you're creating a volcano. So when I heard the Worldcanic conference, I thought, we need to do an imu. But logistics were a little difficult, so at least you get pictures of what it is. The basic concept is you dig a hole about this big, and it can be different sizes for different things. And you pile wood, and then on top of that wood, you pile rocks. You light it from the bottom, and those rocks, after a couple hours, will heat the wood will heat the rocks. Next one, Tony. Yeah, so this kind of shows that again. One more. Yeah, so this is kind of after about an hour or two. The wood has burned down. The rocks are burning hot. So if you flipped one of those rocks over, it would look almost like molten, lava, in a sense. Next one. Yeah, so that, you can kind of get a sense of the heat. And what's happening is the rocks are actually absorbing all of that heat. And then, next one. And what we do is, my brother, we put a layer of banana stump that has been mashed up. And what that does is creates the moisture that's going to keep it from burning the food. But the heat from the rocks will keep on heating that moisture. We put a layer of banana leaves. This is about, so that other one I put in the nighttime, later at night. This would be the next morning. So we usually cook for about 7 or 8 hours at least. And then this is the opening of the imu. Next one, Tony. Yeah. And then this imu was actually about almost exactly a week ago. And in America, we celebrate Thanksgiving, right? But in Hawaii, a lot of people in Hawaii have kind of merged. And so we do a lot of our turkeys for Thanksgiving, that's the American thing, in the imu. And it comes out really nice. The imu actually so this would just season with salt, but really the flavor is coming from the rocks, the wood, the smoke, and the earth itself, actually. and it's a very distinctive flavor that is what we call ono, delicious. It's really really ono. I think that's about all I have to share, and I thank you very much. Gracias for your attention, and I look forward for the rest of the conference. Gracias.
Bueno, la verdad.
Well, you have shared with us a lot. Almost, I would even say that you have just transported her to your hometown, to the Pacific, to Hawaii, recovering those ancestors and those other volcanic flavors from your country, which are not well known over here, but during Volcanic and the upcoming years, we will get back to enjoy all those flavors. Thank you so much, Likahoy. And just let me know that we just finished the morning session for today, Worldcanic 2021. But you are invited to continue this afternoon in another place, which is very emblematic in Lanzarote, namely Mirador del Río. And the presentations will start at 10 to 5. We are going to start with a roundtable, and with a very interesting roundtable where we will just talk about volcanoes, like communication. We're going to talk about the management of those visits to volcanic regions. So thank you so much for being here today, and please don't forget that we will continue this afternoon. Thank you so much.